This is the E-Commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Joseph Anderson from Connex e-commerce to the podcast. Welcome, Joseph.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
It is my pleasure. We were talking about off air that you've just had a snow dump in the great state of Massachusetts where you live, yeah?
Yes, we did. We had a couple of snow. It's a winter wonderland outside.
Very nice. I'm looking out my window here in Puebla City, Mexico, and it's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit out there now. It's 10 to 1 p.m. my time. So yeah, we're living very different. Living very different weather life cycles, aren't we?
We are, yes.
Amazing. Listen, I want to have a great chat to you today about Connex, the platform you have built. But why don't you tell me how you came to be in the e-commerce space? Because it's fairly and squarely a integration platform for e-commerce primarily. And how did you come to be in this space? Because you've been building this platform and technology for 16 years. So that's a long time to be in this world.
Yes, I was working at a software company from 2006 to 2008, and I said I always wanted to do e-commerce websites. I first designed an e-commerce module for a website building platform. And then after I left, I always had an interest in it, probably in my early 20s. And in my mid 20s, I started to do e-commerce consulting. People would be building a website, they needed a store, and back then it was very different. Later, when I worked at my old job, there was an intern that was hand entering sales into QuickBooks, and I knew that it was a problem. She was 100 sales a day. She was going crazy. And when I left the business about a year later, I met a programmer who said, "Yeah, here's the code, how to do QuickBooks consulting." And I started building software for people, and that's how I got into the space, just to help automate the accounting piece.
Yeah, and look, I think that's where a lot of people start out in our industry. They're scratching an itch. They're building something that they saw a need. They built a solution for the need. Then they decided to commercialize that product. That's the story of Amazon, after all, at the end of the day. They built a platform. They built an underlying technology system to run all their technology platforms. And they decided, look, hey, if we can turn a cost center into a profit center and spin that out as a product of its own, boom, AWS is born, right? And now look, AWS is the jewel in the crown of Amazon. So certainly scratching an itch, trying to take something that you've maybe built for internal use or a specific use case, and then spinning that out as its own product in the market to monetize. It's a well-trodden path, and it seems to work very well for a lot of businesses. But if we were to talk about specifically the area of specialization that Connex has, I would put you fairly and squarely in the software category of an iPaaS system, right? Integration platform as a service platform. And normally those systems are oftentimes like internally facing, right? They're okay, cool. Can I connect my ERP to ecom? Can I connect my CRM to ecom? Can I get orders back down from ecom into ERP or accounting package? But then latterly, over the last, say, 10 years in particular, 5 to 10 years in particular, iPaaS systems have increasingly had to be more external facing, meaning how can I connect my e-commerce platform to marketplaces? How can I connect my e-commerce platform to shopping comparison websites? Connecting to external customer facing channels with our internal technology, as opposed to just integrating our internal systems together to share data to make our lives more efficient. And so it feels like you have gone down that path too. Started out maybe more as an internally facing iPaaS system that allows systems to share data and talk to each other internally for business operations. But then latterly, you have added more and more of those external marketplace type platforms to be able to get our product data out into those platforms, to be able to get order data back into our
Mhm.
internal operational systems. Would that be, am I understanding the
Yeah,
platform
that
correctly?
sounds right. We help e-commerce operation managers scale without the chaos. Often you'll find the best CRM tool, the best shipping tool, and the best accounting or three different systems are not all in one ERP product. And we help companies manage a complex workflow between usually three or more systems.
Yeah. And it's interesting because certainly if you were to, for example, log into the Shopify App Store, the BigCommerce App Store, any of the app stores to do with the major ERPs, and you were to search iPaaS or you were to search integration or something like that, you'll see probably 100 results in most of these systems. So certainly iPaaS is a very popular technology layer that's out there today. Sure, you can go out and you can build bespoke endpoint to endpoint custom integrations. But if you've got a traffic cop, as I like to call it, in the middle that can mediate those connections, then it means that if you swap out one endpoint or one solution or one technology, doesn't mean you have to rip and replace the entire integration. Just unplug one endpoint and plug another endpoint in.
And that's exactly my vision at Connex. We often have companies moving from one system to the other, and they're like, oh, we have to get rid of our systems integrator. We have to completely change our workflow around. We also help companies with migrating from one system to the other.
And how do you feel like you uniquely do that? What is your secret sauce, so to speak, that makes you feel like, oh, cool, you could go with Patchworks, you could go with 100 different other iPaaS, Boomi, you could use 100 different iPaaS systems that are out there in the market, but this is what we're really good at. This is where we feel like our sweet spot is for the market.
Yeah, our sweet spot for the market are usually companies between usually 1 to 10 million, typically in that sector, like in the middle. Usually been in business for a few years, more established. We work with companies that are usually B2B or they're mixed, so they're selling B2B as well as direct to consumer.
And do you guys primarily work with SI and agency partners to leverage your platform as part of their projects, like Make would, like they might use a Make, or they could use a Celigo or whatever it is, or are you not only the platform vendor, meaning that you're a product company, and you're a services company, meaning you do the implementation of the integration, leveraging your own technology, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, we do work on partnerships. We do try to work with technology vendors to get referrals. I do agree we need to work with more agencies to make them aware of us.
And if you were to think of the types of agencies that would usually make a good fit for your technology or a technology like yours, where do you see them fitting in from a sweet spot perspective? Just maybe it's as simple as, do they have a similar ICP to us? Does that define the fit?
Yeah, I think it's a similar ICP along with a need. We work with some vendors who realize that we can't integrate everything with everything, that we do need a company to come in and handle the integrations. The way you build an integration for one company is not the same the way you build it for 100 or 50 or even 100 different businesses. It needs to require a specific architecture.
Yeah, and look, it seems like you cover quite a bit of ground in terms of, I guess, what you'd call connectors or endpoints that you support out of the box from ERPs. Cover 5 major ERPs here on the list: the Acumaticas, the NetSuites, the Odoo's of the world, various different payment processing systems. Although, frankly, nowadays integration with payment systems, especially with commerce, is usually out of the box. So very rarely is there custom
Mhm.
stuff. I'm guessing that when you say payment processor integration, let's talk about that for a second, that you mean, for example, a custom integration of a payment processor into an ERP that doesn't support that out of the box, for example.
We don't work too much with payment processors. We usually work with 3PLs for fulfillments. We work with a lot of Shopify companies. We're more on the order processing end, whereas payments happen a lot later. Usually, payment processors, it's very much like you enter a credit card or a wire transfer. So we don't have too many of those types of partnerships or connections.
Yeah, and are you seeing more demand from the sort of smaller end of town of merchants that are on accounting packages like a QuickBooks or a Xero or something smaller that fairly and squarely is an accounting package versus an ERP, heavy duty ERP that maybe has a CRM module, maybe it's got an order management module, maybe it's got a WMS module, plus it's got the financial side of the business. Where do you see the most fertile ground today? Is it on the
I
accounting
see
side or the
more
ERP side?
the founders and startups, they don't really have a complex workflow. You're talking about a business that they've got a proof of concept, their business is starting to grow, their volume is growing, whatever, and they need something to automate because they can't hire and treat people fast enough to process all the orders. We like kind of faster growing company.
And how do you differentiate yourself from, or maybe this is actually a good source of business or leads that come into you? So let's say, I don't know, let's say I'm a $1 million a year e-commerce merchant. I'm selling gifts or something like that. And I'm running QuickBooks in the back end. I'm running Shopify on the front end. And I don't know, maybe when I first started up, I was using A to X as a plugin with Shopify to help integrate me with QuickBooks, for example. But then usually a lot of these integrations that either only work with one or two endpoints and they're really targeted at that, I find that those integrations can end up being pretty limiting in terms of flexibility. Like they have a very clear idea of what they're there to do. They're there to do this one single or maybe two integrations, and that's it. And they specialize in that. And cool, we got an app. We install it from the Shopify App Store and give us your credentials, your API key from your QuickBooks or whatever it is, and we'll make a connection. And we have this default way of integrating. For example, I know a lot of these endpoint specific integrations, they would create a web sales account in, say, a QuickBooks. They wouldn't necessarily create each individual customer from Shopify as an individual customer in QuickBooks, sync down their order history, etc., and then do a roll up at the end of the month. They would just log all web sales down to a single web user in QuickBooks just for ease and simplicity of integration. But oftentimes that starts to get really challenging when you become an omni-channel business and you want to track orders for a specific customer or customer type across all channels, and you want to track those independently of just a standard web customer account. So those point solutions, as I like to call them, they oftentimes have a pretty short shelf life because oftentimes you run into complexity that you just can't deal with a point solution. You
Mhm.
need more flexibility than what that point solution provides.
Exactly.
Is that
Those
fertile ground for you?
Not really. Those kind of companies, if you're going for a low cost, free solution, you're talking probably business to consumer, low volume, solopreneurs. It's a very different market. These companies have high user churn. They're going out of business. I would say if you're price conscious, you're better off with something like that. We work with companies that usually sell B2B, and of course, if it's not putting all your stuff in QuickBooks as web sales is not going to be enough. They often need deposit matching. They often need pulling orders from QuickBooks into their shipping tool. They usually need a higher level of support.
Yeah, and I guess it may be that somebody starts out when they're small. They start out with
Mhm.
something like A2X or something like that, but then they grow, right? Like they're popcorn that
Mm.
eventually pops. And maybe for the first year or two, A2X is going to work for them, but then they suddenly find themselves in a scenario where, oh, okay, we now need to connect three other systems. A2X can't do that. And so do we want to have a secondary platform just to connect all
Mm.
these other systems? Or do we want to move all of our integrations into a platform that can handle everything
Yeah,
centralized in one place?
your challenge with a lot of those low cost free apps is that they have a low cost and a low lifetime value. So it's a lot of pressure on sales and marketing to keep finding new customers, and it's not really a viable system. And when you're charging $50 a month, you can't have the best product and the best service. Like you have to, and for the lowest price, something's got to give. If you want a high quality product with great support, you have to pay for it. And you're not going to get that with a $50 a month app that you just install.
Yeah.
Generally, companies like that, they're going for volume, they're going for numbers. They're going to, Connex was actually like that maybe 10 years ago, where we were going for volume and numbers and people to self set up and not call. I think at one point, I think we had something like 1,200 users churn in a year because we had that kind of model. It was absolutely crazy. It just doesn't really work, and it's not fertile ground. I think you're looking for the companies that have more of a they have a product market fit. They're growing. They have a lot of selling channels. They have a small number of employees, and they have a little bit of a difficult process.
And
Uh,
you've effectively got
mm,
two distinct product lines, right? They have a similar sort of monthly cost, but you've got the Connex iPaaS platform, then you've got the e-commerce analytics tool as well, and you've got these classical SaaS tiers: Bronze, $239 a month, all the way up to Platinum at $599 a month, and then obviously Enterprise if you've got some weird custom requirement that goes well beyond that. The Platinum tier, for example, supports 36,000 orders a year. So if you're doing up to 3,000 orders a month, then that's going to be a pretty good fit for you. But I guess if you're doing 10,000 orders a month, then that's when we automatically get up into that enterprise tier where, hey, look, let's customize something for you that makes sense, right?
yeah, I think at 10,000 sales per month, you're probably doing a lot of business to consumer. Just if you're doing B2C and you have a low margin product, like you're getting $5 a sale, you need 100,000, 500,000 sales to really make any money. And I don't think QuickBooks is a good fit for you at that point because QuickBooks is not going to take 100,000 sales one by one. You need some
No.
sort of summary tool. We tend to work with companies that have a lower order volume but a higher margin product like auto parts, so they don't need as many customers and as many sales to maintain themselves.
Yeah, and I guess if you specialize heavily in B2B, their integration requirements suddenly become a hell of a lot more complex.
Yeah, and that's where you're
That
going to find that those low cost apps just aren't going to service them, and you're like borderline custom.
I guess you're also at that point, you're oftentimes needing to integrate a PIM system. You're needing to integrate custom price lists per customer into the e-commerce platform. You're needing to integrate in maybe CPQ into the workflow where a customer is asking for a custom quote. It's got to go into the CPQ system. The CPQ system has to generate the quote. You got to integrate that back into commerce to present to the customer. So I guess in those heavily complex B2B environments, that's where integration starts to become pretty essential to operations.
Correct. Yes. I think when you go into B2B and especially a mix, you really need those operations. And then at some point, companies outgrow us and they go to an ERP at some point. That's a success story. They got to a $100,000 system that's doing it all. But those migrations take a lot of months. I did a podcast about it, and they're a lot of money.
And I guess they can stay with you even if they don't stay with QuickBooks. If they let, I don't know, let's just say hypothetically they move from QuickBooks to NetSuite. Great. They can keep all the other integrations that they've got in place with you, and then they just unplug QuickBooks and you integrate them with NetSuite instead of QuickBooks.
Correct. Yes.
And so it makes migration a hell of a lot easier than having to re-envisage your entire integration architecture as opposed to just look at it on an individual endpoint basis when you outgrow an endpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do you help them when customers come to you for the first time? Do they usually have some sort of an existing iPaaS system in place, some sort of integration tool in place, or are they most often coming from a point solution that, say, was built by their SI partner or something like that? And then you go, hey, we can replace all this spaghetti custom
Depends.
integration with our
Sometimes we've
platform.
had some customers are doing it by hand, or they have, in some cases, some custom software that's no longer working for them. So that's been a challenge we've encountered. Usually, they don't have a good automation before they come to us.
Okay, so they're just about ready to collapse under the workload
Mhm.
of trying to do all this stuff
Mhm.
manually.
Yeah, I get there are some companies like I had one customer on the phone a couple of months ago, and yeah, we're doing 50 orders a day by hand. I said we can automate this for 25% of the cost and make it go a lot faster, and they chose to do it by hand instead because they refused to make any minor changes to their order workflow. We tend to work with companies that are like, hey, we're looking to scale and grow, we're willing to make changes to make this fit.
And when you first come in, guessing you do a discovery. Oh, cool. What are the systems? Let's look at whether we've integrated with them before. Let's look at if we have a kind of a working taxonomy of how we would manage this. Or, hey, cool, we got three systems we've integrated with before, but then there's this other weird system over here that we've never integrated with before. Let's do a deeper dive discovery. Does it have API endpoints? Do we need to integrate via CSV? How do we actually get integrated with this? So how often are you working with systems that you've like never touched before?
Fairly rarely. We use some iPaaS we've connected to for warehouse management and accounting systems.
Hmm.
So usually I would say there might be an accounting system that we don't have much experience, but because we're using an iPaaS, we have most of the code. Accounting systems all kind of work the same. You have a general ledger, you have a list of products, you have invoices, customers, and the fields are pretty much the same. The names are a little different, but it's not that hard to work with.
And from the word go, where a client signs up with you day one, how long does it typically take you to get them up and running on your platform, fully integrated, most things automated, order automation, product integration, pricing integration, inventory integration, all that sort of stuff, fully end to end integrated? What's the typical length of your projects?
Most companies are set up in a couple of weeks with us. Generally, we have many things pre-built, and we have a rules engine that allows users to pre-configure and create these workflows. Because we're not writing a lot of code, most customers are set up pretty quickly. I think what holds people back are mismatches in data, like products don't match the accounting system in the selling channel. That's been really common, or they don't have the accounting system set up yet or set up properly. So that's been a challenge.
Do you usually have to go in and try to help them with the accounting system configuration side of things? And are you
No,
just,
we
hey,
get involved with QuickBooks settings itself. We may give them yeah, your item name in QuickBooks should match your product SKU, but we're not in there. We're not accountants or bookkeeping
yes.
professionals.
So you'll point them at a QuickBooks specialist or whatever and say, hey, look, go and talk to these
Yeah.
guys. They can help you get QuickBooks clean, ready to integrate with, maybe even do some general ledger work to make sure that everything's accounted for properly, make sure everything's got the right GL codes, etc. Then we can come in and we can automate things. And what's on your radar in terms of endpoints? Are there any major endpoints that you don't yet integrate with that your customers are already asking for, or that you say, hey, look, we see an opportunity in the market here. This is a fast growing platform we don't yet integrate with, but hey, 6 months from now, we will be integrated with them?
Not to my knowledge. We work with the most common ordering systems. I think we could integrate with more B2B order management tools, maybe some of the smaller companies, but maybe they aren't quite as visible. So,
And I guess maybe also some more of the dedicated B2B e-commerce platforms, maybe the
hmm,
Oros of the world, the Znodes of the world, the Kibo Commerces of the world that have a really heavy focus on B2B. I guess maybe that's a potential market you could explore too.
yes, I agree. I think we could explore more of the B2B other order managers since it's more of a focus for us.
Yeah, I guess that's where you automatically get a ton of complexity with these guys, and the commerce systems themselves tend to be significantly more complex than a Shopify or a
Mhm.
BigCommerce because they just do so much more stuff. And I guess that's you got multi-location inventory, you've got a whole bunch of other things that you got to think about. So it all of a sudden starts becoming infinitely more complex when you get into the enterprise B2B world. Even for a $50 million distributor, for example, they are vastly orders of magnitude more complex than their equivalent $50 million retailer, for example. There's almost no comparison between them for sure. When you look out at the market and people playing with things like Lovable and people writing apps, vibe coding apps, when you see people trying to do more stuff on their own, when you look at AI automation and some of the workflows that the likes of ChatGPT and even Gemini are trying to help people build, do you see a future where a lot more of this stuff is built by AI? And
No.
how do you think that impacts you?
AI is a tool. It's not meant to work on its own. It's not self-aware. We
Hmm.
use AI Connex for marketing purposes. Hey, can you generate a sales script for us? Can you give us information about this target customer? What are their pain points? Where do they look for our product or service? We use AI to help write some of the code. Hey, can you write code that does this? And we'll put it into an application, but it's not meant to build the application entirely. I don't feel it's at a point where it can do some of the architecture and put all the pieces together.
Yep.
I disagree with the concept of on a really small scale AI could do it, but for something like Connex e-commerce, which is a very big complex piece of software, it wouldn't do it.
And I guess it could maybe get you to a POC level, like a proof of concept level. Hey, look, let's try this one really tightly sandboxed piece of functionality. And I guess maybe it could help some of your clients build something that, oh, hey, we want it to work a little bit like this. It's not 100% ready to go. It's a pure proof of concept, but hey, we'd like it to work like this. I guess in terms of being able to communicate requirements, maybe it's then helpful. But also, I think the other place where AI starts to become helpful, especially with these vibe coding platforms, is maybe having a renewed appreciation for just how complex building software is and understanding how hard it is, and maybe even it perhaps adjusts the perception of value that specialists like you bring to the table as well, because all of a sudden now they go, oh, this is much harder than we thought it was going to be, and so therefore we need to have a realistic budget, we need to have a realistic timeline. Maybe it helps clients become a little bit more realistic if they try to go it on their own and then they go, geez, no, we need a professional in here.
I agree. AI is not meant to work on its own. You need someone professional. It's a tool. And the more context you have for AI, the better it will perform.
Yeah, I'm really fond of the saying, look, you not only need to know the questions to ask of AI, but you need to know which answers to question. And that's where domain expertise really comes into play, and where it becomes important is how do you know which answers to question if you don't really understand what it is you're trying to build. If you don't understand the complexity, if you don't have a background in it, if you don't have any experience in it, like I've been in e-commerce for 25 years. AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, whatever, they don't have my 25 years of experience in the industry in their database. And they don't have the anecdotes, they don't have the pattern matching ability based on all this previous experience to go, oh, I've seen a previous client handle this thing this way. Oh, I've seen them handle it this way. How do you think this would fit best with your business? And I think being able to ask those nuanced, subtle questions in a way that helps guide a client to a great outcome, I think that's something that AI, at least for the foreseeable future, just won't be able to do.
Yeah, I agree. It's not meant to think like a person. It's not going to take the place of someone with 25 years of experience. I remember I was on AI. I was asking about the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, Philip Rivers. And I said, hey, how did he do in his last game? And it said he hasn't played since 2021. I'm like, no, he played last week. So AI can be wrong. And it
Yeah.
has given me bogus answers before. So I'll often take AI and I'll ask my marketing director, I'm like, I did some research. Is this accurate? And then we'll check in. So yeah, that's 80-90%, and let's just make adjustments.
And how big is your team currently, and how do you think that AI will allow you to be in a place where you need to grow your team faster, slower, do
I
more
think
work?
AI will help us grow the business. Even with writing code, we can't write code fast enough to implement everyone's features, and it helps us get more done with the existing resources. I disagree with the concept that AI is a jobs killer. I think, if anything, it'll help get more value out of its existing employees and help keep customers more happy. We're using AI to help make marketing plans, make marketing video scripts, to do marketing research. I think AI is helping keep our business running. It's not meant to replace the existing employees.
And how do you at the moment, like if we think about like your go-to-market motion, how are you, apart from being on podcasts like this, how do you get the word out? How do you find those pockets of your ICP clients? How do you make sure that they know you exist? How do you get a seat at the table when there's a new project that they're looking at from an integration or automation perspective? Or how do you identify those pain points where a client is going, geez, we're scaling really fast, we are just throwing bodies at this. This is totally unsustainable. We just cannot throw more human beings at this. We've got to find a way to automate our processes and our workflows. Otherwise, we're just going to die under the weight of our own growth.
We've used many strategies. We do technology partnerships. We work with 3PLs and warehouse management companies to work with their customers to get them implemented. One challenge these companies have is people want to migrate to their platform, but due to a technology constraint, such as you don't sync with my accounting tool, they can't do it. So we often work with those kinds of companies. We use LinkedIn to prospect. We find some integration partners there. We also we are working on our SEO and some of our content. We have a YouTube channel and we have videos that describe some of the pain points of our customers.
And what do you think the future of iPaaS systems looks like more broadly? Because I do see Syndicate and a number of N8N and a few others, they're definitely venturing outside of maybe their original product set or feature set where they maybe were a pure internal integration tool. Now they've added external channels, but then they're starting to add other things like OMS functionality because they're like, geez, okay, if we're pushing product data and we're pushing inventory data up to something like an Amazon, we need to then be able to turn around, pull orders back down again, integrate those into our ERP or our OMS or something like that. Now they're getting more into, say, for example, more areas of distributed order management capabilities on top of their core iPaaS capabilities. Is that where that feels like such a natural adjacency for sure, because you're pushing up pricing, you're pushing up inventory, you're pushing up product data, but to pull down order data based on that feels like a no-brainer. But where do you see the generalized industry of the ESB, enterprise service bus, for lack of a better term, or iPaaS system, whatever you want to call it? Do you see, because what we've seen before in other categories of e-commerce related software, like search, merch, and personalization, like those used to be three very distinct product categories, and now we're seeing those merge together in the market where, somebody like a Nosto, who was a pure personalization platform, then they acquired an enterprise search company because they know that all the enterprise search signals dramatically improve the personalization that they could do in terms of product recommendations, experience, taxonomy, dynamic taxonomy creation, etc. So where do you see the future of iPaaS systems maybe starting to converge with other categories of software that are adjacent?
With iPaaS systems, many that I found, you need to be a developer. Like, you wouldn't know as an e-commerce operations manager that the product SKU in your website is supposed to match your QuickBooks item name. You wouldn't understand how customers, like what field you should use to match. And I think that many iPasses are built for people that really know what they're doing, somebody like me, for example, or somebody highly technical. Here at Connex, we're an iPaaS in the sense that we give you access to many integrations. We're not an iPaaS in the sense that things are pre-built and ready to go. You can easily log in and configure everything. You don't need to drag and drop Shopify and ShipStation on there and configure all these arrows and field mapping and all that crazy stuff. I think the future of iPaaS is going to be something like a recipe, something that's pre-built for you, click, or maybe use AI to build a workflow for you. It's, yeah, here's the recommended setup, and then you can adjust it yourself. I think one problem with many iPasses is that they're not accounting e-commerce specific, and there's no UI. If you wanted to resync your sales or check an error log, they don't have that, and so that's, I think, one of the challenges with many systems on the market.
And is that something that you're looking to attack specifically with your platform to make that sort of more business user friendly as opposed to technical user friendly?
Yeah, we're trying to make it more business user friendly. Many iPasses that I've seen are technical friendly, and I do feel they have a very limited market.
Yeah, and I guess there are platforms like Make, for example, with their recipes system where they've tried to make it more business user friendly. And I've built integrations using Make, so I kind of have a pretty reasonable understanding of the platform. But I'm highly technical. I'm a non-developer, but I'm a highly technical non-developer. So I can read API documentation. I can understand integration syntax. I
Most people can't do that. Like, you need an incredibly detailed understanding to do that, and it's something that comes with years of work. I feel like they're a better fit for an agency or some sort of developer, but they're not actually going after the end customer.
Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. And if you could sprinkle fairy dust or you could snap your fingers and make a change to the integration, the system integration ecosystem within the commerce world, what would it be?
It'd be great to have a single place where people could go to find answers. I feel like the information that e-commerce operations managers need is scattered all over the internet. It'd be great to have a source where it's like, yeah, this is where I go when I need help and advice. Like, this is my group.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's e-commerce fuel. There's a few others that they've tried to create a community of e-commerce operators, and so there's some of that out there, but certainly specifically for system integration, I don't think there's a community out there of system integrators or a community out there for operations managers to come in and understand and ask questions of each other and of people that are highly technical in the industry
Are
about.
there any other sites you mentioned as e-commerce fuel, and who else?
I think B2B e-commerce association is trying to do that. They're really trying to put out a tremendous amount of content, certification, training. I think they're doing some really good work specifically for B2B e-commerce practitioners to bring up the minimum standard of knowledge across all B2B e-commerce practitioners, e-commerce managers, heads of digital, directors of digital, VPs of digital in the B2B e-commerce space. They're really working hard at that, and Justin King in particular has produced a lot of curriculum and content around that and certification levels around that. I'm their global MC for their B2B e-commerce world events. We had 3 of them last year. We're having 3 more this year. So I think this is slowly starting to emerge, but it's very early days.
Yeah, those definitely look like very good sites. We'll have to check them out after the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, as we do come down to the end of our time together, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes and your website in the show notes. If anybody wants to learn a little bit more about what you do, how you do it, some of the ways in which you can uniquely help customers that are struggling with system integration problems in their business, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, visit us at connexecommerce.com and you can click speak with an expert, and we'd be happy to schedule a short call to discuss your needs. We work primarily with companies who are B2B or mixed to automate complex e-commerce workflows.
I love it. Now, this is the point of our conversation where I get to flip the script. I get to turn the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. So, Joseph Anderson from Connex e-commerce, what is your question for me today?
In your opinion, what would be the best place to look for e-commerce operation managers that are B2B or mixed? Do you think LinkedIn is best?
Yeah, look, I have found great success on LinkedIn. And I've been creating content at scale on LinkedIn for over a decade now, and certainly a ton of my business growth has come from LinkedIn. Less so over the last 24 months because of the changes in the algorithm, the move to AI. as part of their core algorithm, it's become much, much harder to get cut through on LinkedIn. Where I've started to see a lot more traction is actually Reddit. I also do a lot of work on X as well, but I haven't seen any business come from X yet. But certainly Reddit, jumping in there, answering questions, joining subreddits that are specifically targeted at e-commerce operators, and basically any e-commerce related subreddit, you'll see a lot of questions in there around automation, scaling, challenges of growth, that sort of thing. So I think Reddit could be a really nice little additional string to your bow in addition to all the other content work that you're doing and the LinkedIn work that you're doing. I would reach out to the team over at Pipe 17 and Kelly Gosh in particular. I would talk to them because they're building a consortium to develop an order integration standard across all connected commerce systems. And I think more standards being in the industry. Finally, we're seeing ACP and UCP be announced for agentic commerce standards within the commerce sphere. UCP, famously Shopify and Google have created the UCP standard, just announced it last week at NRF. So standards in our industry are what is going to make system integration easier for everyone, because everybody's kind of got their own individual standard now. Each system integrates in a unique way, and that's, they can all say they're API driven, but they all have their own custom syntax. They've got their own custom everything. And so bringing standards to our industry is going to make things a lot easier. Even EDI, there's no one single global standard for EDI. There's 10 different global standards for EDI. So I feel like standards will help our industry grow faster and make integrations easier. So reach out to Mo and Kelly over at Pipe 17. Kelly in particular, because I think he's leading the charge over at Pipe 17 around this development of this order integration standard. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate chatting with you today. Have a great rest of your week. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.